Okay, so we are going to be going over the lesson for today, which is a review of exponent rules. This should be mostly a review from Algebra 1, and we'll go over a lot of the old exponent rules that you learned before. Now, let's look at the first example, the expression x squared times x to the third. A lot of you probably already know the shortcut here, but let me just show you how we build to the shortcut. So in expanded form, I know x squared is I have two x's, and then for x to the third, I know I have three x's. Well, if you go ahead and see how many total x's I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is x to the fifth. And so if you remember the shortcut, all you really have to do when you see you are multiplying exponents is you just add the exponents on top, and so this becomes x to the fifth, right? Okay. So let's go ahead and do some example problems. X to the fifth times x to the third. This would be, you just add the exponents, x to the eighth. Okay. For number 2, I'm multiplying negative 2x to the third y to the fifth times 4x to the negative 2 and y. So you still make sure you multiply the negative 2 and the 4. And then so you should get negative 8. And then now if I have x to the third and x to the negative 2, you add the two exponents. So that just becomes x to the first. Okay. You don't have to put a 1 there, but you can if you want to. But we usually do not put the 1. So I am actually going to erase that 1. And then y to the fifth. And remember, if there is no exponent here, like I just said, that's a y to the first. So y to the fifth and y to the first, this becomes y to the sixth. Okay. So remember, what we did was we added 3 and negative 2. That would be positive 1, and that's why it's an x by itself there. Now for number 3, I'm going to multiply 3, and then there's no number here to multiply it with, right? So it's just 3 times 1, so it's going to be 3. And then now I have m squared and m to the fourth, so I just add the exponents. That's m to the sixth. N to the third, n to the third is n to the sixth, because I add the exponents. And there's a p on the left and there's no p on the right, so it's just going to be a p here. So that's my answer. Now what I want you to do is I actually want you to pause the video and try 4, 5, and 6. And then when you're done, unpause it so you could see what the answers are. Okay, so for number 4, if I add the exponents, this should be x to the eighth. Okay. Number 5, I multiply the 4 and the 10. This is going to be 40. X to the 6 and x to the 1 is x to the 7. And then y to the first and y to the fourth will just be y to the fifth. And then number 6, this will, oh, number 6 is the same as this. I didn't realize it. I forgot to change it. Okay, so let's go to the dividing exponents. Let's take the expression x to the eighth over x squared. Well, if I have expanded form, what I really have is I have eight x's on top, 2 x's on the bottom. Well, remember that if I have the same thing over each other, it just divides to 1. So I could cancel one of the x's out. I could cancel another of the x's out. And what I'm left with is I'm left with 6 x's. So the shortcut when you're dividing exponents is just to subtract the exponents. It's x to the 8 minus 2, and so that's why this is going to be x to the 6th. Okay. Now, let's do some example problems. Number 7, this is really just x to the 11 minus 3. And so this is x to the 8th. Now look at number 8. I have numbers here on the left. So 25 divided by 5, that is 5. And then now I have y. Now be careful here. It's a negative on the bottom. So this is 8 minus negative 3. But what happens when you have minus and negative? That just turns positive. So this becomes 8 plus 3. So my final answer for this question is 5y to the 11th. Okay. Now for number 9, 2 over 8 is a fraction. So what a lot of people do here is they do 2 over 8 and they say it's 4. That is not correct. Remember, it's a fraction, so it should be 1/4. And then x to the 12th over x to the 3rd, we subtract that. 12 minus 3 is 9. So this is x to the 9. And then y to the 3rd over y, I just subtract that. That's 3 minus 1 is y squared. Okay. So once again, I want you to pause the video, try 10 through 12, and then once you're done, unpause it to see what the answers are. So number 10, if I subtract, 5 minus 1 is 4, so my final answer here is y to the 4th. Number 11, 14 over 21 is a fraction again, but a common factor. I could simplify by 7, right? So 7 goes into 14 twice, and 7 goes into 21 3 times. So this is 2 over 3. And then this is x to the 4 minus negative 6. But remember, if you have a double negative, it becomes plus. So my final answer here is 2/3 x to the 10th. Okay, the number 12, 16 divided by 4 is 4. 5x to the 5th over x squared. I just subtract that. That should just be x to the 3rd. Y to the 7th over y to the 3rd. I subtract that. And that should be y to the 4th. Okay, so that should be your answer. Now the next property is power to a power. So if we go ahead and look at this x squared to the 3rd, in expanded form, it means we have 3 x squares. Okay. And so that means I have, because x squared is just 2 x's, and so that means I have total x to the 6th. And so the shortcut when you have a power taken to another power is you just multiply those two powers. So the shortcut is I'm going to do x to the 2 times 3. That's just x to the 6th. So now let's do some example problems. X to the 10th taken to the 2nd power is just x to the 20th. Now for number 14, if you have two things in here, this 3 needs to be brought into both terms here. So this will become x to the 6th because I multiply it, and it becomes y to the 15th because I multiply it when it's power to a power. Number 15, once again, you need to bring the 4 into both. So here's where I see a lot of people making a mistake. They'll do 2 times 4 and they'll say it's 8. That is wrong. It's to the power. So it's 2 to the power of 4, x to the power of 16. And so if we simplify this, 2 to the power of 4 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So my final answer here is 16x to the 16th. Okay, so once again, I want you to pause the video, try these on your own first before filling them out. Trust me, you want to do this because when you take the quiz, you need to understand how to do these problems. So try them on your own first. Number 16, your answer should be y to the 8th. Number 17, you bring the 5 into all three terms. So it's going to be m to the 5th, n to the 10th, and p to the 15th. Number 18, once again, you bring that 3 into both. And so this is 3 to the 3rd, y to the 15th. And then 3 to the 3rd is 27. So your final answer here is 27y to the 15th. Okay, now we're going to review zero and negative exponents. So here, the following sequence shows powers of 3 by repeatedly multiplying by 3, fill in the missing blanks. So I know here 3 to the 1st is 3, 3 squared is 9, and if I multiply by 3 again, 3 to the 3rd is 27. So you see the pattern here is I'm multiplying by 3 to go to the right. Well, now how do I get everything on the left? Well, if I multiply by 3 going this way, then that means I'm going to divide by 3. Divide by 3. Divide by 3. And so if I have 3 and I divide it by 3, 3 to the 0 power should be 1. Now, if I divide 1 divided by 3, so it's going to be 1 divided by 3. Well, that's just 1/3. Okay. Now, how do I do 1/3 divided by 3? I'm going to do that up here on the top left. 1/3 divided by 3. Remember, when you divide fractions, it's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So 1/3 divided by 3 is actually going to be 1/9. And then if I divide by 3 again, 1/9 divided by 3. Remember, when you divide fractions, it's the same thing. It's keep, change, flip. So 1/9 times 1/3 is 1/27. Okay. So the same thing works for 5s. Maybe you should try doing this on your own. However, you need to there's an error here. This should be a 5, and this should be a 25. So change that on your papers or on your notes, whatever you're doing. So I want you to try to do this one on your own and see what you would get. So if I'm multiplying by 5 going to the right, I would divide by 5 going on the left, right? So try it on pause the video, try it on your own, and then see what you get here. So if I multiply by 5, 25 times 5 is 125. And then if I divide by 5 going this way, this is going to be 1, right? 5 divided by 5 is 1. 1 divided by 5 is 1/5. 1/5 divided by 5 is 1/25. And 5 to the negative 3 is 1/125. Now I want you to notice something. Look at positive 1 and negative 1. Look at positive 2 and negative 2. Look at positive 3 and negative 3. See how they're just reciprocals of each other? Okay, that's how negative exponents work. they do not mean multiply it. Like 5 to the negative 2 is not negative 25. Please do not make that error. It's actually the reciprocal. So here's the summary. Whenever you have, and now look at the center. Look at 3 to the 0 and 5 to the 0. Anything to the 0 power is always just going to be 1. Okay. Now, if you see what happens when you have a negative exponent, well, think of when you think of negative exponent, you flip the base. So b to the negative n actually becomes 1 over b to the n. And when you flip it, the negative exponent is no longer negative. It becomes positive. And then on the right, 1 over b to the negative n, it's going to flip. So it's going to go on top now. And then so this is just going to be b to the n. Okay. Now, I want to do a common error that people make. So on the side here, let's say I have something like 2 over x to the negative 3. Okay. Let me try to make that better. Whatever. That's 2 over x to the negative 3. You only flip whatever's negative. Don't think that this is going to become x to the negative 3 over 2. This just becomes 2x to the negative 3. I'm sorry. 2x to the positive 3. Okay. You don't flip the entire thing. You just flip whatever's negative. So if the negative is on the bottom, it goes to the top. But don't flip anything that does not have a negative. So let's go ahead and look at some example problems, and hopefully you'll make sense of what I was saying here. So 100 to the 0 power, this is just going to be 1. Now, for number 20, here's a big common mistake people make. Negative 100 to the 0. The negative does not apply to the 0, only the 100. So 100 to the 0 is 1, and that negative comes later. So the answer here should be negative 1. Remember how I told many of you this before? PEMDAS. Always do the exponents before you do the multiplication. The negative on the outside is multiplying by a negative 1. So you leave that negative for after. So let's work with negative exponents. So 21, 2 to the negative 3. You see the negative exponent means you flip it. You bring it to the bottom. You put a 1 on top because you can't just put it to the bottom with nothing on top. There has to be a 1 there. And so this is 1 over 2 to the third. And so this is 1 over 8 because 2 to the third is 8. X to the negative 4 is just going to be 1 over x to the 4. Now 23, this 23 and number 20 are kind of similar. And I want to show you why these two are kind of similar. So you know how I said the negative, you apply it later? This negative 1 only applies to the x. Do not flip the 3. The 3 does not have a negative exponent. So this will just become 3 over x to the positive 1 power. The 3 is positive exponent, so it does not flip. The negative 1 only applies to the x, so that flips. 1 over 3 to the negative 2, once again, the 3 to the negative 2 flips to the top, and so this will just become 3 squared. Yeah. Okay. Number 25, look at the bottom. The m is negative, the n is positive. So we only flip the ones that is negative. So my final answer should be m to the third over n squared. So you see how the n stayed put because it was positive. The m flips because it's negative, and then you make it positive when it flips. Number 26, once again, you do not flip the 3. You only flip the y because the negative one only applies to the y. So you flip the y to the top and the 3 stays on bottom. And so this becomes y over 3. And once again, you could put a positive 1 here. You don't have to. Number 27, once again, you only flip the ones that are negative. So the c stays on top. The d is going to go on the bottom. So this is going to be c to the 4th over d to the 3rd. Number 28, once again, you flip the negatives, the positives stay where they're at. So the x is going to stay on top, the d is going to stay on the bottom, the y will flip to the bottom, and the c will flip to the top. So your final answer will look something like this. X squared c to the 8th all over y to the 3rd d to the 4th, right? The negatives get flipped, the positives stay where they're at. Okay, let's look at 29. So one thing that I see here is the m to the 0, that just becomes 1, right? So just 3 times 1. So I'm just going to simplify it first by doing 3 n to the negative 2 over x to the negative 4. So you see what happened there? M to the 0 is really just 1. So 3 times 1 is still 3, right? Anytime you see to the 0 power. Now you have negative exponents, so you are going to flip. So this will become 3 x to the 4th all over n squared. Okay, so once again, you are going to try the next 9 on your own first. What I want you to do is please pause the video and try these on your own first. And then once you finish them, or at least tried your best, unpause the video so you can correct your answers. Okay, so number 28 should be negative 1. 29 should be 1. 30 is 1 over 6 squared. So this is 1 over 36. 31, the x to the negative 3 goes to the top. And then the 4 stays on bottom. 32 is just 1 over m to the 8th. 33, the e is flips to the bottom. Everything else stays on top. So this is d f to the 3 all over e squared. 34, the q flips to the top. And then p stays on the bottom. Now 35, the only things that are negative are the x to the negative 6 and the d to the negative 2, so those will flip. Everything else will stay in place. So this will be 6d squared y to the 4th all over c to the 7th x to the 6th. And some of you might ask, does it matter the order you put them in? No. If you put 6y to the 4th d squared, that is fine too. 36, once again, p to the 0 just becomes 1. So This just becomes x to the 5th, y to the negative 3, 6w to the negative 4. Whenever you see something to the 0 power, it's just 1. And 6 times 1 is just 6. Now I'm going to flip the negative exponents. So this is going to be x to the 5th, w to the 4th, all over 6, y to the 3rd. Okay. Okay. The last couple of problems here are just going to be a combination of properties. You should be able to also work with these properties if you put them together. So for example, look at number 37. On the top, you have multiplication of exponents. And then you're going to be dividing. So the first step here is to add the 5 and the 3. And so this becomes x to the 8th over x squared. And then now you're going to go ahead and know that if I'm dividing exponents, I subtract. So my final answer here is x to the 6th. 38, the top is power to a power, so I know this is going to become p to the 6th all over p. And then once again, I'm going to subtract. So this is p to the 5th. Okay. Look at 39. I have x squared over x to the 3rd, so I know I subtract. Y to the 4th over y to the 7th, so I know I subtract. So this is going to become x to the negative 1, y to the negative 3, because 2 minus 3 is negative 1, 4 minus 7 is negative 3, but I have negative exponents, so I'm going to flip them. So my final answer should be 1 over x, y to the 3rd. You could put a 1 here too, it doesn't really matter, but that is my final answer. You never want to keep negative exponents, always make them positive. Now for number 40, let's go ahead and try this one. So remember, like I told you before, you have to distribute that into both, to everything. So this is 3 to the negative 3, m to the 9th. Remember, negative times negative is positive. And then n to the negative 6. And then now you're just going to flip them. So I know m to the 9th will stay on top. Then the negatives will go flip to the bottom. So this will become 3 to the 3rd, n to the 6th. And then 3 to the 3rd is 27. So your final answer here is m to the 9, 27, n to the 6th. Now 41, I have 3 p's. They're all being multiplied. So what does that mean you do with the exponents? Well, you just add everything together. P to the negative 5, negative 4, and 6. Negative 5 plus negative 4 is negative 9. Negative 9 plus 6 is negative 3. So this is p to the negative 3. Remember, all you do is you just add the exponents. And so this will just become 1 over p to the 3rd. Okay. Now 42, last thing. This 3 on the outside has to go into every single thing here. So this will become 2 to the 3rd, p to the 6th, 3 to the 3rd, and m to the negative 9. So you see how I brought that 3 into every single thing here? So now a couple of things happen here. This is negative, so it's going to move to the top. So my final answer here, 2 to the 3rd is 8. P to the 6, m to the 9. And then on the bottom, 3 to the 3rd is 27. Okay, so once again, I want you to pause the video, try 43, 44, and 45 on your own. And then once you're done, unpause it and check your answers. Okay, so for 43, if I add the exponents, this becomes m to the negative 3. And then I flip that, that's 1 over m to the third. 44, remember you're going to bring this 3 into both. So this is 4 to the third, x to the negative 6. X to the negative 6 means you're going to flip it. So 4 to the third all over x to the 6th. 4 to the third is 4 times 4 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. So my final answer here is 64 over x to the 6th. And then for 45, once again, I add the top. That's going to become p to the 7 over p to the negative 3. And then now since I'm dividing, I could just subtract. So this is p to the 7 minus negative 3. And so remember, double negative means you add. So this is p to the 10. Okay, so once you have this done, all you need to do to turn in is that other worksheet that's titled Review of Exponent Rules Classwork. Do that, turn it in by tomorrow by 5 o'clock. Okay. If you need any help, please email me